I know
Oh yeah,
I
when you
know
listen to the podcast, I know.
you go right in.
I just have such FOMO that I like to not make anybody feel left out. So they didn't. The only thing you missed, listener, was us finding good Wi-Fi and talking about how we both have curly hair. Anyway, Rachel, I'm so glad to have you on. Rachel, I put out a call to see if anybody in our community wanted to come on, and I asked Rachel what she wanted to talk about, and she wrote such a beautiful and clear, like, I don't know, like soul question. I was like,
Mm.
yes, yes, that is what we like to talk about here. So why don't you just like quickly introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about this journey you have with food, and then let's talk about what you want to, let's talk about the exploration, really. That's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
So I just want to say, like, I feel like I'm both starstruck and talking to like my long lost best friend at the
Oh my
same time.
God, I love dialectics. That means so much to me. Thank you.
Um, I feel like I found, you know, I feel like you find people when you're supposed to find people, like like your teacher like reveals themselves to you. And I feel like when we're people like us, we're always seeking, and we're always trying to find the answer to a big problems that I feel like I used to use food as the answer to every problem.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like from a very young age, like I always remember having this like ferocious desire, just really just desire that was described as really dangerous, that needed to be tempered, that was not tolerable or palatable for other people, that it was like too big for me, and that I
Mm.
didn't know myself. um and I felt dangerous, like there was something dangerous about how much I wanted.
Did your
And
parents like express that to you? Is that how you got that belief? Where do you learn
I
that?
mean, my parents never explicitly said that to me. I feel like sometimes I had wonderful parents. My father was a psychotherapist. I grew up in the 80s in New York City. And I think they all did the best that they could
Oh,
for sure.
absolutely. I just mean like, did you maybe like
I
internalize
have
some
these
of
like,
their fear?
yeah, like diet was always talked about, food was
Mhm.
always talked about, booze was always around. Like I came from a long line of people who considered themselves foodies, like a
Mm.
Eastern European Jewish family in New York City, immigrant grandparents. Food was love, but also
Right.
you needed to make sure you looked right.
I
Uh,
know that. Isn't that one just so tricky?
yes.
Like enjoy, enjoy, but you're too heavy.
Right, but not too much because
Right.
like
But
no
she
one
doesn't eat
wants to see it. Right,
dessert. But why aren't
exactly.
you eating dessert? And you're like,
Right.
what?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're in a room and you feel like you have the secret code, and then you get in there and you're like, why am I here? Like
No,
I
like
don't have a
literally,
program.
right. Yeah,
Yes.
it's so true.
Yes.
Gosh, yeah.
And it's very confusing for a sweet little child. It's confusing
Yeah.
for all of us. So I just remember this like very visceral memory of when I was young. My parents took me to a Chinese restaurant and they ordered like this big platter of clams. And they told me this story. So like this has been told to me. It was like a story that was told at parties when introducing me about
Mhm.
how I like ate the entire platter of clams. And this Asian woman passed by and from my parents' description was like in awe of the small little 3-year-old who was eating
Mm.
all of these clams.
Mm.
And they thought it was like very funny, but
Mm.
it humiliated me.
Yeah.
Just like kind of like a circus animal that like did this thing that was for other people's enjoyment. And so I
Mhm.
was like on diets I remember going to like the bottom of Hillcrest Jewish Center and going to Weight Watchers meetings from the time I was 10, and I was always
Yeah.
the youngest person there.
Yeah.
Um, and my weight went up and down, and I remember for all of my life looking at photos and knowing how much I weighed and knowing what diet I was on and being so conscious of myself in spaces. And until I had the language of addiction when I got sober, I didn't understand what it meant to feel like I was like floating above my body, looking down at the world I was living in, not really being in my body,
Mm.
right?
Can you
Because I
say more
was so
about that? Like, how did getting sober from alcohol and drugs make you more inside of your body?
well, when I first um my sort of like last diet attempt before I got sober was when I read the book Bright Line Eating.
Oh, wait, you're talking about sobriety from food.
No, I'm talking about
Oh,
sobriety
okay.
from alcohol. Yes. It'll make sense in a second.
Okay, got it.
So like, it was like my last ditch effort to like get my food under control. After I had done like a lot of like dry Januaries to try and stop drinking, I realized that, you know, food and alcohol were really like sisters for me. They were like, when I drank too much, it gave me license to not care about binging. And then
When
I
I
would
drank
binge.
too much, I woke up like covered in chocolate in my bed.
Exactly. 100%.
That's
like
a literal story. That's not a figurative story,
No,
folks. That's actually true.
I believe you.
Thank you.
Like solidarity.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to one of the coaching calls for Bright Line Eating, and the Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson was talking about, you know, if you're having a problem letting go of alcohol, like you might want to look at that. And I was like, oh, who is this woman? And I like delete, like throw off the bookshelf. I'm done.
Well, she was a threat, right?
Yeah, totally. And I was like, you're not gonna, like, that's fine.
I'm here to talk about food, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, get in your
Chill
lane.
on the alcohol. Mm-hmm.
She's protected. So, but you know, when, you know, they say like, it like ruins you once you like get the wisdom in your brain. You're like, oh, how am I going to do this anymore? Because now I know, like, I know someone else knows that truth that I don't want to know.
Yeah.
And so I tried to stop drinking on my own. I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried. And the more that I tried, the bigger it got. But I was secretive, and I did all the same things that I did with food, but I did with alcohol. But somehow alcohol was like, there's no way you're an alcoholic. Like, you have a job, you have children, like things look fine. Everyone else around you drinks, like this can't be you. And because I didn't, again, look like the image in my mind of what I thought an alcoholic was, I was like, this is fine. But then it wasn't. And I finally came to, I hurt really, really bad. And I finally wanted help. And I got sober. And then I went out of the rooms, and then I got sober again. And then when I came in the rooms the last time, 6 months later in a prayer.
You're speaking about 12-step rooms, yeah?
Yes.
Got it.
Sorry, yes.
Oh, just for those listening. I mean,
yes. I got sober.
I love a room. I love a room and I love a circle. Don't worry, but just for those listening, we want to make everyone feel included.
Yeah, I was sitting in the morning, morning prayer or morning meditation. The same way I got this like download that I needed. It was finally time for me to put down booze. I got a download that it was time for me to like pick back up this food addiction piece. Like I was ready.
Time to look at it.
Yeah. And again, once I was received that, and the voice didn't sound like me, it was just calm and like all the things I want to be.
When you were quitting drinking though, like, or had quit drinking, gotten sober, like, was the food manageable, or did the food take the front seat where the alcohol lived?
She was like, I got you. I'm fine. I'm just going to take up the slack. I mean, it was wild. It was
so
like
what you were filling with alcohol and food, the food just came in and filled that hole exclusively and ugly.
Yes, it just doubled down.
Hold on one second.
Sure.
So you were filling that hole.
Yes, I was filling that hole, and suddenly things just got wild, Molly. Like things that I just always was restraining and restricting. Suddenly,
like what? Speak in specifics. I love these stories.
Oh my God! Like I feel like I'm sweating. My so like gummy candy.
Oh yeah.
Like what? Just. I would just go into TJ Maxx and I would just clean out the whole aisle, right? Just gobs of.
So you're doing like all the research, like how many gummies can I put into this body?
A lot, by the way, like a lot. You know, I'm very, very talented. And I would just be like, I was like, oh, like I'm just, you know, just self-righteous, just thinking I figured it out. You know, like I don't need all of this. Just I was whoever, I latched on to whatever I could, right? Yeah. And I just like saddled up to that and I let it pull me. And then 6 months in, it was as if I wasn't sober, right? Because I wasn't.
Yeah.
So I hadn't done a lot of the work. I hadn't done a lot of the surrender, and this voice, this message, this download, which by the way, I know sounds crazy, but it really was true for me in both instances. When I was finally ready to be willing, I was just told what to do and I just did it, which I'm not comfortable doing. As you see by earlier in my story, I don't like being told what to do, which is part of the reason why I reached out to you. But then I picked up right line eating, and the addiction piece for me allowed me to just surrender to whatever I was being told. Because I knew from the 12-step rooms that I didn't know what was best, and that I wanted whatever this other thing was, and that I was
Keep going.
And because I was able to follow the directions, like, and know what to do with when I was in the 12-step rooms, I was much more teachable, right? But I also never in my wildest dreams ever thought that I would ever figure out this food thing.
Well,
like never.
But we're talking about you having not figured it out today.
I know.
So, but I find this a fascinating story. And I tell you why. I feel really lucky because I did food first and then I did alcohol. And my experience with people is not the one you're telling me. Because usually when someone does something you can really be abstinent with first, the spirituality that comes with, in my experience, like a really loving a recovery with food, which requires like a lot of like self-examination and am I in wisdom and is this a loving choice? And that it's like, with alcohol, it's not, it's like this drink isn't a loving choice. Done. Right. And I recall this too, right? I would like to tell you though, in the spirit of your story, the only reason I did the food first was because I never wanted to stop drinking. And because there was so much negotiability, little did I know how much I was going to have to surrender. Like that was my own little, like, math equation in my head. Like, oh, can't be that hard. I'll just, and the healthier I got, the more clearer it got to me what I had to do, who I had to be, whatever. But so you decided you found Bright Line Eating, which is a very, very clear and rigid. I say that not in a judgmental way. I just I try to be accurate to explain.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like
100%.
You eat this, you don't eat this, you weigh and measure everything. You take that scale out with you. You eat 3 times a day. You don't decide how many times a day you eat. You really eat there's a lot of decisions aren't made for you, right? I read that book and wrote a book. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I read that book and I was like, wow, I could never do this. And I'm worried other people can't. And I'm going to write a book just in case someone needs something similar, but a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then what happened? So you read that book. You're like, cool. This is kind of like being abstinent from alcohol.
Right. I read it. This was the second time I read it, right? Because I tried it once.
You do things twice. I like that about you.
Yeah, I know.
First time's your interview. Second time's your marriage. It's good. I like it. I'm like that.
So I read it again and I was ready. Like the first time I read the big book, I was like, nope. The second time I read it, I was like, oh,
yeah. I love this part of the story. I don't know. I've met people where like their 15th time is the one. Like that's why we just never give up.
No, you don't. And that's what I loved so much about when I found you. I felt like this idea of not knowing, of being normalizing not knowing when it's going to work. And by the way, to my story right now, there's never an end. Like you don't.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Right. Exactly. That I'm not.
Yeah. So the basic concept is talk to us. Like, so you like, this is funny because I feel like we're about to define like, and if you're not watching on YouTube, like I'm using quotation marks, like success.
Right.
Via like how much weight you like, right? Like we're about to define like BLE, like Bright Line Eating, like they define success and they, about like how much weight you've lost and how long you've kept it off for, which are metrics. Listen, I've been doing this a long time, which are metrics in which like, there's an entire association that is defined by this National Weight Control Registry as the years have, so talk to me about like what your defined success is. And then let's talk about what we want to do about your spirit.
Yes, let's.
But I mean, we're gonna see what you'll see what you'll do it right. You don't even need me to help you, but let's go there.
I definitely disagree. So my highest weight, 236 pounds. I weigh 136 pounds.
You did that all with BLE?
No,
Oh,
my highest weight, I dieted up and down. I entered BLE in the 180s and then arrived here.
with more with like the trek concepts that I'm talking about.
What do you mean? Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes. So from like 236 to 180-ish, releasing certain foods and then doing more like calorie counting. I did Weight Watchers. I did all sorts of things until my body just settled around there, and my body didn't get any lower, and it was still not enough for me. I was still overweight for my body, for me. And then nothing else was working. And then I was desperate. And then I found Bright Line Eating, and sugar-free, flour-free was revolutionary for my brain.
Absolutely. And I don't want to say her research is off the charts. Her research is off the chain. It's so
revolutionary for my brain. Agreed.
The way she explains the sugar and flour is so wonderful.
Yeah, I had never heard of anything like that before.
Right.
But because I understood abstinence, I was like, oh.
Yeah, and you understood alcohol addiction. You're like, well, that makes all the sense in the world. I'm actually addicted to food. Ain't that a kick in the head? Yeah, totally. Me too.
It was crazy. So, and then, I've been doing it for almost 2 years, this way of eating for almost 2 years.
So when you say this way of eating, because this is my question about it, because I even know Susan Pierce Thompson has a tricky time following her own program, but are you doing her program as it's written in that book? You eat 3 times a day, you weigh and measure all of your food? I
eat 3 times a day. I write my food down the night before. If I don't know exactly what I'm having, I write, I'm going to have a bright meal, which means it'll have the components of it.
And weighing and measuring everything?
When I'm at home, but not when I'm out, not when I'm traveling. Yeah. I never take my scale with me out because it doesn't feel resonant to me. It never did. So I never do. I just eat like a portion of food that feels
I call it like a civilian.
Totally. Like what does the world eat?
Right. Like, what would my best friend Lauren eat right now? Okay, I'm gonna try to eat that.
Yeah. Let me be more like Lauren. So I do that, and it works.
But when you're at home, you kind of religiously weigh.
I do. Okay. I do. And it, for me, it doesn't bother me. Like I find a lot of peace with it. I find that the boundaries make me feel a sense of, that elusive feeling of control that we think that we have.
It's a really interesting and wonderful way to say it. So you're like a control junkie. And so have you had perfect behavior? Like, have you had no binges in those 2 months, 2 years? Have you had no overeating episodes? Have you had no missteps?
Yes, I've overeaten on bright foods, but I haven't had any sugar or flour.
Okay, so you've overeaten on on foods that have sugar, like the foods that don't have sugar and flour. Yeah,
like I've had like dried fruit or nuts, when I was really, really hungry and got home.
Oh, dried fruit? Oh my God.
No, that's not bright.
But you've had dried fruit. So it's been imperfect is what we're saying.
Correct. Oh no, I have not. So I'm not what's called like a crystal vase recovery.
Who calls it that? That freaks me out.
Yeah. That's what, crystal vase is like perfect. And I am not.
People identify with that?
Some people do.
Wow.
But like that.
I have a lot of feelings about that.
So I have a lot of feelings about it too, which is why I'm reaching out.
Okay.
Now the tricky thing about this, full disclosure.
Yeah. So we're here for.
I mean, you're going to love this because you love truth so much. On Instagram, I started documenting my journey on Instagram, and Bright Line Eating saw my journey and really liked it and invited me to be a Bright Line Eating ambassador. And so there's a bunch of us that are Bright Line Eating ambassadors that sort of just like, there's not really anything other than saying that we are. So my before and after is on their website, and people ask me questions about Bright Line Eating. And so I when I originally received it, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, it felt great. It felt like, I like got the gold star. And then I started to reflect about like truth telling. I was like, well, I'm not doing exactly what they're telling.
It's fascinating.
I'm not doing what they're telling. I'm not perfect. And by the way, I don't want to be like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is, that does not feel good to me. It feels like, and this is why I reached out to you. There's a couple of things that I have in my daily food plan that are not written in the book.
How
And
does
then
it
I
make
would,
you feel?
it makes me feel like an imposter.
Can we get to a feeling?
Um, Shame.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right, we got to fix that today, okay?
Okay.
You know what the function of shame is?
Um,
It's fascinating given what you're saying, by the way.
I don't know. Is it
Protects you,
isolating?
it protects you from rejection, protects you
Okay.
from rejection. So it makes sense, right? That you're having this feeling of shame because you're sort of self-rejecting because you're in this position of identifying as
Right.
as a bright line eating person,
Right.
and that like it's a confusing.
Right. It's confusing. It feels incongruent. Like I feel this
Right,
identity of myself that I
right.
feel like I want to be so proud of and out
Yeah, that's
and
gonna take like
loud, right?
7 minutes. Yeah, 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 yeah. But like, well, right, but then you were really helped in this rigid structure, and
Wasn't.
now
Yeah. And
now
now
you're
there's
like kind of
more,
outgrown that rigid
right,
structure.
correct. And
Yeah,
there's more room, and the room is okay. Like I'm okay. You know,
say the least. Like
yeah,
understatement of the morning, right? Like,
right, right. Like I have things in my plan because through getting to a healthy place with food and feeling like oh my gosh, my food obsession, my body obsession is just not, it's not, it only comes up when I'm feeling these feelings,
yeah, of course.
right?
Well,
Like
yeah.
otherwise I'm living now. And
But
so I start,
shame is the only anesthetic for shame is going to be food. It's profound
yeah,
rejection. It's literally what the brain is trying to protect us from completely. Like it is one of the most dangerous feelings for our brain, this
yeah,
outdated brain of ours, you know?
yeah,
So that makes all the sense in the world. It's a funny thing about diets
yeah,
because they don't take into account the human spirit. They don't take into account biodiversity. They don't take into account even like the healing of the endocrine system in its own way. I was recalling the story the other day to somebody where like I was really sick in the beginning, like, and I mean,
yeah,
bright line eating wasn't out, but I had to eat like very particularly. Like I had a very big binge eating disorder. I'd gained a lot of weight on a bariatric surgery. I was about to lose my life, my job. So like I was really not eating many foods because I was scared of them.
mm,
And I frightened because I came so close to losing everything that I was like, yeah, like good for you with that sprouted bread, but like I would eat the whole loaf. And about 5 years in, I was like at this event and we were getting on a bus, and the only thing they had was like Ezekiel bread and almond butter. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to binge on it on a bus,
right,
and I'm gonna not eat dinner, and that's makes me so I like just did this pro con list, which is like me eating an Ezekiel bread sandwich is better than me not eating anything at all. And it turned out the Ezekiel bread didn't trigger me at all. It was actually incredibly like filling in the way that, as we know, that way that like I'm done with my
I'm
meal.
nourishing. Yeah,
Isn't that
yeah,
the
yeah.
best feeling? Just like you
Best.
eat a meal and you're like, wow, I'm full. Let me go call my friend.
Live my life, right?
You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me go watch TV. Like, oh, wow. Like, there's such a freedom to that. And I was like,
Yeah,
wow, this is breaking news. Like, this is breaking news.
yeah,
And, it took 5 years. Like, it's funny because when we really follow like a prophecy, I
mm,
think it works for some, but eventually we have to understand if we're seekers like you're talking about, then we're going to change. And so the plan is going to change. Like, I haven't had sugar or flour almost 13 years in the same kind of imperfections that you're talking about. But what my plan looked like day 1, day 5, day 8 couldn't be farther because I've evolved.
Right. And that's the thing. That is the thing. I feel that evolution, and I
You
feel
are that evolution, Rachel. You're the whole point. Like,
but that's
except
the
for
thing,
you're trying to fit yourself into this
well, mold,
identity.
correct. And then the
Mhm.
other thing is that there's not a lot out there for people at this stage of recovery. There's a lot out there for people that are trying to recover and like get over that initial, like,
I have
I
a
don't
lot of things
know,
for people like at your stage. Come hang out with us.
I should. This is
I
when
got plenty of people living their lives, kind of like living their lives. And
yeah,
not to say this isn't an important part of their life, but it isn't the important part of their life because they're just not that sick anymore.
right. I guess my fear when you say that, they're living their life and they're not that sick anymore, I think what keeps me in this place of being afraid of my curiosity, which is like the opposite of anything I would ever, like what I'm telling you, I don't share with other people.
Except for the
No,
5,000 people listening. Yeah.
it's okay. Well, you know what? We're all the same. When
It's funny what our soul does, though, isn't it? Like,
oh,
you're screaming so loud inside that you
hmm.
need to put this on my podcast. And I love that about you. Like, that's your soul talking, right?
It is.
Your
It's
soul is
loud.
like, if I'm going to
So
say
loud.
this, you're not going back in the shell.
I know.
I love it.
Yeah. I get afraid. I am afraid that I'm gonna lose, that I'm afraid to go to the other side of the curiosity, to fully allow myself to have confidence in the things that I'm curious about with regards to my food plan. And if I told you what they were, you would think that I was
Well,
wild.
obviously, you have to tell me now, Rachel. Come on.
It's little things, Molly. It's
Mhm.
like not putting premier protein in my coffee, or not having, sugar after the third ingredient of a protein powder, and being worried that, technically that's not on my plan, or having fruit. Like, I train for half marathons now, so I drink a hydration that has all of the ingredients, but the last ingredient is stevia, and I don't drink artificial sweeteners, right? It's like little crevices,
But Rach, you're doing it.
I
You're
am.
participating in these behaviors and just feeling like the shame of secrecy. Is that?
Yeah.
But what's
Like,
the ultimate
like I'm a,
fear?
like I'm a fraud, or
Well, I mean,
a little
you're
bit,
not
right?
following Susan Pierce Thompson's plan. I mean, let's take, me, I like accurate emotional expression.
Yeah.
Like a fraud, like, I don't know, are you the IRS coming? Like, nah, like,
No,
let's move
not
out
like
of
that.
that language,
No, definitely not that. I think that
like, yeah, like you're not following
I'm not,
you're
it's
not
not perfect. No, it's an adaptation of the basic principles of the plan. It's like the plan worked, and then,
you wanted to expand
yes, I wanted to expand.
because the
And
plan is the size of a postage stamp.
right, very small.
Yeah.
And there are things,
And needed that. And you needed that for a while.
and thrived and needed it. But
1,000%. Me too.
I don't know how to feel safe here.
Yeah, you do.
Here.
But listen, yes. Let's not sign that contract.
Okay, we'll hold.
Can we say, instead of I don't know how to feel safe, can we say I want to feel safe?
Okay, I want to feel safe in this new stage of my evolution.
So what is feeling threatening to your safety? Because I got to tell you something. Everything you're telling me, I'm like, yeah, wow, if that works for you, that's great. If that works for you, that's great. If that works for you, that's great.
I
So
know, but are you saying that in the same way, like you're saying, like, oh, good for you?
I never say that.
Okay.
Because I believe in self-determination being the most important thing to have lasting change.
Yeah. Because I feel like I put all of my trust in something else, and it has controlled how I relate to food. and the space of having self-determination and trusting myself and believing myself is something that I have in all of these other areas of my life.
Well, you're not practicing that biggest, you're,
But
you
I'm
know,
not, I'm not
pardon, you all may want to sign off right now because I'm about to get real spiritual. It may make you feel uncomfortable. Apologies, but not really. But you know, you are creating this diet as your higher power
Mm. Right.
instead of
I
your
don't want
higher,
that.
but that's what's happening.
No, but you're
Like you are
totally,
praying, like
I'm praying to the altar of,
your
yes,
government that
right,
rules your life is this diet that really gave you this very rule-based, simple diet that helped you to get to a certain place.
right.
And now you need you need a government overhaul, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And that's really scary.
it is.
Expansion is scary, especially for eating disordered folks. But we've outgrown it. I mean, you've outgrown it and you're
I'm
acting on that, right? It's like at least
right.
your spirit's like, can you just like let me out and go with your behavior? Like your behavior's like, yeah, like this stuff is working for me. I mean, the ultimate fear is what? That you're going to be rejected, you're going to gain the weight back. Like
Yeah,
you probably will be rejected. Like why do we care so much about that?
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, like, right? Like, let's be real.
I,
Like,
I mean, I feel like it's like this whole where it's like this like liminal space where all of the emotional sobriety I have through AA, like almost there's like a boundary, like
well,
it didn't seep in. It feels like
try
almost
this
like,
research on with me. Try this research on with me.
okay,
When we use nouns to describe ourselves, it gets embedded into our person. And
okay.
then we get protective over it. I am smart. It makes me take less risks when I believe that I'm smart because I'm protecting that. Oh my God, if I do that, maybe I won't be smart. Right? This is what research says. Research says when we use verbs, when we talk about how hard we work, when we talk about motivation, we talk about energy expenditure, when we talk about trying hard. This is really the second chapter of my book. That's what has us taking risks. That's what has us expanding because it's not so personal. Interestingly, I do think this 12-step routine, when we identify as alcoholic, it's good because we protect it, right? We protect it. This is who I am. I'm a recovering alcoholic. You ain't crossing that. I think what happened here is that you identified with a diet, and that's a part of your personality instead of a recovering food addict or
Right.
instead of a recovering eating disordered person,
Totally.
which is an
Yes.
expansive thing to
Totally.
protect. When you're
Right. And there's
identifying as a
right.
recovering bright line eating instructor, whatever you
Right.
are,
Right.
then it's like, oh my God, well, if I go on off of those rules, then who am I? It's like we
100.
may want to change the identification
Yes.
that you are going to lose something. I don't lie.
No, I know.
But
I
you
mean,
know what they say in our other program is that spiritual vacuum is when you let go of something, something bigger and better comes in its place usually.
oh, for sure.
I believe that wholeheartedly in this
I,
situation, by the way. I'm like thrilled to see what happens if you make this decision.
I've never thought about it that way. And yet
Okay.
it seems so simple to consider. Oh man, there is like the praying at the altar of, right,
This little
replacing.
teeny government, you're like, I'm
Yeah.
only good if,
Yeah.
it's intrinsic now. It's a part of
Yeah.
your identity, which I do think is useful for some things, but I think it is really harming you now because you're living at odds with yourself because you have a knowing inside. No one
Oh,
calls me when things are good, you know? It's true.
I would call you things were good, Molly.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. But no one's like, hey, I want to come on for coaching. Everything's amazing. But like, it's like you just got a little too deep in, and now it might, it's like, this is what it is to be a spiritual person. It is to shed skin. It is to shed skin.
No, but man, it's so funny because I feel like when you dip a toe into this life, this spiritual life, it's like the fiber of your being starts to know. Like it's like it develops this like internal.
But like, Rachel, do you not trust yourself? Like, do you think if you like don't identify as a bright line eating person, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna eat everything?
Oh no, no.
Okay.
I mean, I know that no. I have confidence in again, like if you were just asking me how the actions felt for me and how I felt when I was in the moment, it feels like I know the questions to ask. I've trusted people to run things by.
Yeah. And even if you had like, let's just say like this crazy thing. I mean, like, let's just say like you had like a week of eating like bread, you'd come back from it. I know you, right? You know, like, let's just say like the worst case, right? Like, even if like the premier protein and the stevia became like a bag of gummies, even then you'd be okay. And even then you would be worth it. Like, this is where diets get sold.
Well,
is to start to say, well, you cross that bright line, you're no good. That's not true. And it also doesn't mean you start your day counting, none of that BS.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't allow for us to have an experimental life. That doesn't allow for us to learn. That doesn't allow for us to practice compassion or curiosity or anything that really matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you might have just outgrown your stamp.
Did you say it took 7 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take that long, Rachel. Yeah, I think you just outgrown this house. You're leveling up. Leveling up's very painful. Leveling up's very scary. And you want to know something very wonderful about you? Do you want to know the behavior that is the most predictable when it's time to level up and that you haven't participated in yet, to my knowledge? Sabotage.
Oh yeah.
Because you're really up against a limit right here. And I would like to compel you to push through, see what's on the other side. That's why you did this. We don't like quit alcohol and sugar and flour to like live a postage stamp life. I don't. Maybe some people do. Like, I don't know, these crystal vase people. What do I know? And by the way, I'm not judging them. Like, that's what I am not judging a person on this.
No, I think what you said it's so interesting. Like, we hear what we want to hear, right? So I remember like years ago, like at the beginning of What You're Craving, I heard you talking about your disagreements with aspects of bright line eating, right? The rigidity and all of the things you mentioned. And I remember being like, oh, why would you say that? The same way that I was like, oh, why would Susan tell me stop drinking?
Right? Yeah, people get like very intense.
You get worked up, right? Yeah.
Like, stop telling me it's rigid. I think it's rigid.
and I think, like, to your point, like, what I love about what I'm hearing you say to me, that I feel like I'm in the process of allowing it to sink in, is recovery. You recover and you change, and what once was necessary is no longer. Just like when I train for these races, what I was doing at week 1 will not serve me at week 12. Like, it just won't. It's not what I need. And I think it can be as simple as that, but somehow I have gotten.
It's when you took on that ambassadorship. I mean, that is the turning point of where
I think
you can't allow yourself to grow in the direction that your spirit is telling you, is when you took on that identity as an ambassador. Because that is saying you're a lifer now, and you do these 3 meals with weighing. And the beauty of life, Rach, like, we can change our minds at any time.
Right.
And for whatever it's worth, and you and I live in the same spiritual principles, I don't think you could understand how many people you might be able to help with your truth. I've learned that. I can't tell you the amount of people are like, I can't believe I heard somebody say that they ate through bariatric surgery, my biggest point of shame in my life. And thousands of people have contacted me and been like, and I almost didn't write the book because of it. Like, we don't know anything about who we impact in this world. We have no idea about our shadow.
It does make me feel shame.
Of course it does.
Yeah,
That's how you've been washed there.
yeah. And
That's
I don't want to feel that way because I have all of this gratitude that I want to live in. I don't want to feel that way anymore.
Well, it's a scary jump.
Yeah, it
It's
is
a scary jump. We'll take you, by the way. Come on over. We'll take you. You got somewhere to go.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, right? Like finding a community that allows you to, I was reading that amazing article that you posted about Dr. David Wiss.
Oh, wasn't that a beautiful article?
I was like, is this God giving me this article before I get on this call with Molly Carmel?
Probably.
I was like, oh my
Probably.
God. I was like, wait a minute. It's not just me. Like it's not just
Well,
me.
you
It's
know, the toxic
right.
tribalism of diet culture, I do think there are that doing bright line eating for the rest of your life is small and it's rigid and it's diety. I mean, and even as I know from other things I'm in, some people need to live that way. That's like great. And I'm so glad. And it's better than the alternative. And I
Sure.
endorse it if you believe it.
For sure.
And for
I agree
most
with
of us, we can't and we shouldn't. And we need to expand.
right. And from what I know about my own experience with pushing down my feelings and pushing down my internal knowing, bad news, like you said, like
Well,
I can
that revel's like 7 minutes from
correct.
lighting your house on fire.
It's like, just tell me when to go.
Like Rebel Rachel, like, thank you so much for your appropriate behavior because they feel like we might have gotten her.
Yeah.
But like, you've been a good girl. Yeah. She's just sitting there with like matches, being like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
Yeah. Living a double life's hard.
Yeah.
And if you're spiritual, it's like almost impossible.
I know, but you're right. But thank God though.
You know, you're brilliant though. You're like, I need to talk about this. I mean, I don't know. I always feel like, we put up the flag, the universe is like, we got you.
I mean, I've been circling this around in my brain and with people and talking myself out and in of it for
Yeah.
months.
Well, it's really
Months.
scary. This is a
Months.
program that has really healed you and given you direction and answers in which you didn't think it possible. And people who have that kind of rigidity are very triggered by me because I'm threatening, right? Because this idea of trusting yourself and making a mistake, getting back on is like, what? Well, who do I tell about it? How do I kind of day? It's like, this is like not a relationship. That's what you're moving into, a real
And
relationship.
that's what I want.
I hear that.
I mean,
It's yours for the taking, sister. Like, it's pretty unexciting, right? If we really take we take the magnification out of it, like the healing is like, all right, cool. So I got to like just switch the paradigm a little, but the magnification is the shame of having to say to these people, like, I'm not going to be an ambassador anymore. I love you for the time. They've saved my life. And my time here is up.
Right.
I read a book about I forget the chef who wrote it, but even he was saying like a chef doesn't even work at the same restaurant forever. They move restaurants because they get too caught up in the same idea, like you're not alone.
Yeah. I appreciate that because I was definitely feeling very alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. I can promise you that. And like shame will do that to you.
Yeah.
Shame will just get you feeling isolated and hopeless and keep you there and be like, okay, don't say, believe you me. I kept that book. I kept that book in a Google Doc for 4 years.
Oh, I know.
Because I didn't want to write about that bariatric surgery.
Yeah. I mean, I remember When I was listening to your story, when I first started to learn about breaking up with sugar, and I first started listening to What You're Craving, there were so many aspects of your story that when I heard it, I was like all the breath came out of me. Like, because I could envision myself. I know what it feels like being an imposter. I
Yeah.
know what it feels like to feel like how can I be a mother and drink and get in the car?
Yeah.
Like, how can
Yes.
I, right? Like,
Right.
how can I
How can I go back to work at a therapeutic boarding school? Yeah, I get it.
exactly. But and so I really have to say that hearing that was like it was a seed that was implanted in me.
Mm.
And then now that I'm at this stage, I think that's the like little white flag that was like, why don't you just like ask the question and tell the truth and see what happens?
So listen, I mean, you know your next steps, but you want me to tell them to you?
I mean, I'm always here to listen if you want to share, but I think I know what you're going to say.
Well, one thing is obvious, and I'm not going to say it because it's not for me to say.
For sure.
Um, but the thing I would really suggest is I would beef up your power circle differently. I'd find some people with some time off of sugar and flour, not in BLE or recovering from BLE. They're all in my community. You can just put a little white flag up. You'll get scooped up in 17 seconds. That's not my community, sorry, the community that I founded. And because I think that we want to create the safest, softest, most cashmere landing for you when you decide to make this decision.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can find them anywhere. I just happen to have, like, I could tell you 7 people off the top of my head who are going to be like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with you. And
Yes,
they
I
have all
know.
these like little get togethers. Like, it's great.
I mean, I'm here for that. I love a power circle.
Yeah, that's where I would start. And then I think it'll feel, I don't think you can do the first thing. I think it would make sense, like, oh, I'll quit that thing, whatever. Like, I wouldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
I would do it the opposite way that you think you should, which is get yourself really juicy, cashmered up, feeling really confident, having other people's experiences with you, and then see how it feels to take that leap.
Yeah. 100%.
I love that. This is the truest truth. I love you. I love every minute of it. I wrote that though. And then email, I was like, oh, all caps. I was like, this is all I want to talk about. This is all I want to talk about. You changed so many people's lives in this.
Thank you.
There's a day where the rigidity stops working, and it usually stops working into binging. So be grateful for that, you know?
For sure.
Your
For
truth
sure.
is so beautiful. I love you.
Thank you so much. I
Thanks for
really am
coming on
so
the
grateful for
show.
joining.
We
All
love
right.
you.
Take good care.